really interesting mix of sessions for the afternoon. And we're welcoming back some past speakers at previous Sprit conferences. And we also have some new speakers for this year as well. So kind of a bit of a mixture. But first up, we have Thane Chambers. And Thane, I know you're there. You're currently muted, just as a heads up. But I'll just introduce Thane before she starts. I'm guessing that Thane's name is probably familiar to many of you out there. She's currently involved with the LIS Bibliometrics Conference, which is happening in the very near future. And I know day-to-day, Thane is the head of Research Impact Services at the University of Alberta. So welcome, Thane, and I will pass things over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. Are you guys able to see my screen here? Okay, sorry, I just need to move some stuff out of the way. Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for having me here today. So I am coming to you from Edmonton, Alberta, in the Canadian prairies where it's not sunny, which it is. I live and I work on Treaty 6 territory, traditional homeland of Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And I look forward to a future that is the result of the truth and reconciliation process that we're going through right now. So I'm here today to describe how we wrote and created a document that defines and supports research impact at the University of Alberta. And I think echoes some of the stuff that the other speakers, the earlier speakers were talking about. So what I hope to do is to take you on a journey. I'm going to start with where we were when we began this movement towards writing and adopting this statement. And then I'm going to tell you what we went through during this journey. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about where we hope to end up as we keep on moving forwards, although the destination is still a bit undefined and unknown at this point in time. Research impact really varies greatly at our university, probably like a lot of other large institutions, and this variation depends on who you are, what faculty you're in, and the type of research that's being done. So some of our faculties definitely have a very wide view that's very holistic, that recognizes and rewards research impacts that happen inside and outside academia. But I do note that those tend to be faculties where research is situated in the community. So our School of Public Health, our faculties of education, Native Studies, nursing, and medicine and dentistry. And definitely when we talk to people, many faculty members celebrate the knowledge mobilization and knowledge transfer frameworks used by the Tri-Council Funding Agency. So they'll talk a lot about SSHRC and they'll talk a lot about CIHR. However, I do need to point out again that when you bring up this topic of research impact, so not bibliometrics, but when you use the word research impact, most people will limit the conversation to talking about H-index and journal impact factors. And definitely we do have at least one faculty that does require members to publish in a certain core set of journals, which all have high impact factors for reward, tenure, and promotion. And even in faculties which have a wider view of research impact, definitely a publication in the Lancet would be celebrated and would be directly tied to the researcher. And I'm not sure if the downstream impact of teenagers graduating from high school because of a support program developed by a researcher would have such a clear line back to the researcher or would be celebrated in the same way. So we had an interesting conversation when we were doing our needs assessment for our research impact team. And we were talking to a professor and we asked him about partnerships and research. And he told us about a project he was doing with the city on the well-being of workers. And so we asked him if he considered that to be impactful research. He stopped and he said, yes, definitely, but our system doesn't track that kind of stuff, so it doesn't really matter. So in terms of how research impact is used or was used, so it's definitely the same as most other places. It's used in hiring, in tenure and promotion, in award applications, in internal award adjudication, and definitely in our faculty evaluation process. So this is our performance appraisal system that happens annually for faculty members. So this is how they get promotion and merit increments. And it's also used in benchmarking the work that we do in the library. But there were no central policies or guidance around research impact. So we, like the people, us who are here, we all know that citations and publication behaviors differ across different fields of research. And I actually think, and that our faculty members know this too, but I know of two stories which did cause me to feel a little not well. So I had a query from someone who administers a central peer review committee that helps people who are applying for a large award, a national award. And so he described this phenomena where when an application was being submitted from someone from the Faculty of Native Studies, like that type of faculty, and it went to the peer review group, the scholars from STEM would be very dismissive. And they would say things like, well, this person's H-index is only whatever, or I don't think this person has enough publications, or this person only writes books. And then the second story is about a researcher who works in a very interdisciplinary faculty, which includes people from the social sciences, science, and has a few humanities people. And so she was one of the humanities people. And so she put in an application for promotion because the dean told her to do so. The dean really supported her in that. And the evaluation committee denied the promotion. And their only justification was that the researcher had no journal articles in journals which had a high impact factor, and that the number of citations was not enough to be considered for promotion. So again, here we have a completely irrelevant framework to judge other people and being judged by people who have power. So what was happening, and these are only two stories that I know about, I'm sure there are more, is that for many parts of campus, research impact was only meant bibliometrics and just a very narrow subset of bibliometrics. So if we worked at a company and people were doing things that aren't right, we would just say, well, just make a rule about it, make a policy. But this is tricky at the university. So our faculty evaluation system is determined at the faculty level. So this totally makes sense because you wouldn't want to have engineers telling people in fine arts how they should do their research. But on the other hand, it also means that if the faculty of engineering decided that reward is only based on publications in a small core set of journals, for those faculty members to change that, they would basically have to have a revolution. So another option would be they could go through our General Faculties Council, which determines policy. It would have to be voted on there. But I don't know if all of you are aware, we have huge budget cuts over the past couple of years, 2.5 years at the university. So doing anything in that environment right now is very difficult. So that's where we were in the spring of 2019. And that's when our University Research Policy Committee, which is a central committee that comes from our Office of Research and Innovation, created a subcommittee on research impact. And this list of people were the people who were on it. And so we didn't have any terms of reference, or if we did, I never saw them, but we were tasked with doing something about research impact. So we would meet monthly and people would talk. They talked a lot. They talked a lot about this faculty evaluation process and how there were problems with it. They talked a lot about the promotion and tenure process, how there were problems with it. They talked a lot about internal awards and how they were given out and how that wasn't fair. They also talked a lot about DORA and knowledge mobilization and how that is very important and how it's something that is not recognized or rewarded at our university. So there was a sense that there was a lot of research being done that wasn't being recognized or celebrated and was being lost. So we knew that we wanted to create some change, and it may be easier to do that on a local level. And maybe the first way to do that would be to attempt to change the conversation around research impact. So we decided that we would create a white paper to make this happen. And in this white paper, research impact would be defined very broadly, and it would be diverse, and hopefully it would encompass all the types of research and impacts happening on our campus, that it would be tied to the values of our institution and to the people who work there, and that it would have calls to action. So we didn't want it to be like, blah, 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 research impact, blah, blah, blah. We wanted it to be like, blah, 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 research impact, and here's what you're going to do about it. So we made this document, and it's called the Statement on Research Impact for Research and Innovation at the University of Alberta, maybe not the jazziest title, and it was approved by our University Research Policy Committee in November. And in this document, research isn't just about journal articles, it's about lots of things. It's about books, it's about innovation and commercialization. It includes a contribution to academic and professional conferences, professional and policy reports, public dissemination and knowledge translation activities, and exhibits and creative performances. And we ended this list with among other things, because we didn't think we'd actually be able to include all of it. So all of these impacts are to be valued by the university. And we also had some practices for assessing research impact. So it should include both qualitative and quantitative assessment methods. It should be transparent, fair, and rigorous. It should ensure that the assessments being done are responsive to the particular research impact goals of those being assessed. So if our research involved teenagers graduating from high school, if we had part of that research process involved communicating with those students, like creating some kind of communication for those students, and the students actually read it, or for their parents, then that would be something that should be rewarded. And so another part of this statement, I'll just talk to two of these things. So one is that research should be open and accessible to the public. So as there are many librarians here, so I hope you appreciate that. And then the second thing was that research impact requires time. So this came up a lot in our conversation. So there'd be a lot of conversation about, unless you have a big research program going, okay, the wheels are turning and money's coming in and you're able to keep staff and all of that, you may not have time to go into the community and meet with gatekeepers and do that kind of groundwork that needs to happen. And that often needs to happen in a face-to-face kind of way. And that's what needs to be done to lay the groundwork for you to be a successful researcher. But because the faculty evaluation process happens annually, people are trying to do that, but they're also trying to churn out publications at the same time. And that churning out kind of low quality publications just so you have something for your faculty evaluation takes away from doing this groundwork. So we want to change that time frame. I don't know how we would do that, but I do know that at Ghent University that they have a 5-year evaluation window for their faculty, and I'd be interested to see what happens with that. So for us at the University of Alberta, research impact now is broad and it's diverse, and we have some guidance about how to use it. In terms of how will research impact be used? I don't know if there'll be any immediate changes here, but I do know that this document has been widely distributed, and that probably the most important thing in it is this diverse definition of research impact. So I hope that gives some researchers the confidence and the comfort in celebrating non-traditional types of research impact, and I hope that they include those items on their CV and in their faculty evaluation packages. In terms of the next mixer, well, I hope that I don't have to bring the giant bottle of vodka to the party to make it bearable. So in terms of the stories I told you before about that peer review committee, it would have been much easier if I could have just referred that administrator to this document, and I hope that would have pushed those committee members who are being difficult and carefully. And in terms
Bella, are you there?
Yeah, it's her own internet.
It's Thane's connection. That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. Okay. Well, I guess we can just give her a moment. Um, Maybe while we're waiting for that internet connection issue to be resolved, we have a few questions already. We definitely encourage others to submit questions. Oh, and Thane, there you are, like magic.
Oh, what did you miss? What did you miss?
The last thing that I took away kind of before the connection cut out was just you were talking about how the statement had been approved in the fall, but you're kind of still like waiting to see kind of how things go, essentially.
Okay, so I don't know what got missed. Is it still good? Okay,
Yep.
so I'll just maybe just quickly try and catch up. So if we had had this statement before, so the things I had talked about before, so working with the award committee where people were being difficult would have been much easier. And also the person who was up for research, who up for promotion, who did get her promotion in the end, that would have been much easier if we had had this document. And so just my last slide is just about those of us who do this assessment and how we are now being asked to have qualitative data in the assessments that we do, but how, like our research impact team, we don't really know what that means. Does that mean that we have to do this qualitative assessment? Or do we just suggest that the research program do that on their own? So that's the one thing we're not sure about. So hope you didn't miss too much, and that's it.
Thank you, Thane. And yeah, the momentary technical glitch was quickly resolved, so all good. We have had a few questions arrive from those of you that are listening in, but we definitely have maybe 4 or 5 minutes for questions, which is great. So one question which may be on the minds of others, so Thane, you mentioned that at the beginning it sounded as though there was a lot of talking and sharing of perspectives within that subcommittee. So the question from one of the BRIC attendees is, how did you actually get the committee from talking to then developing this policy or working on this statement? So kind of what was the kind of the process of evolution from just the talking to then something more actionable?
Yeah, so basically what happened is that there were 3 of us in the group who are like, want to get things done people. So we stopped the conversation and we just went ahead and wrote a draft. We had a few drafts that went through the committee. So we would still have meetings and people would talk a lot, but then we would just behind the scenes wrote up a draft, and that went through a few different iterations before it went to the University Research Policy Committee. So it did require somebody to kind of just say, yeah, these people are just going to keep on talking forever, but we just need to get some work done.
Yeah. You kind of created a document, then it's something to work from. It's something to focus on. It kind of like refocuses the conversation.
Exactly.
Okay. And another question that we have, so somebody wrote in to say, I might have missed it, but how long between the time you decided to create the statement until when it was actually published? So you said it was approved, was it November of 2020?
Yeah, it was approved, and we started in the spring of 2019.
Okay. So not a quick project.
That's pretty quick for the university.
Yeah, not too quick, but not too long. Okay, and then we have a few more minutes. Another question is, so kind of looking forward and thinking of next steps, like has your group or team just thought about kind of the reflective piece, like in the future? So how will the impact of this statement be, reviewed or reflected upon, just to see if it's been making that positive impact that is the intention?
Yeah, so that's part of kind of the grander plan of all of this. So that's being led by 2 of the members who are at a much more senior level than I am, who have those kind of understand the politics of the campus. So they're like this document has been introduced at Dean's Council. and places like that. So it will take time for
Yeah.
sure. So
It's exciting, big project, a very big undertaking. Well, thank you, Thane, and thanks again for speaking out for it. We always enjoy having having you here and your perspective, and U of A is obviously always up to really good stuff. So thank you. So I'm just taking a look at the schedule. So our next speaker is Marissa Ruffalo, who is also returning as a previous speaker from another Brit conference. And I see Marissa is up there as a panelist.